counting into my minutes. Awesome. Okay, so Kim introduced me and kind of told you about SuperCon. So 3 years ago, a few of us got together and we started a comic book convention in South Dakota. 3 years ago, we started at the Ramkota Best Western out on the edge of town, and in typical nerd fashion, they shoved us in the basement. They said, okay, nerds, go in the basement. And Brian, the founder who's over here, and I put everything on our credit cards, and we printed 500 lanyards, and we hoped we'd sell 500 tickets and make our money back, and 1,500 people showed up. And it was pretty amazing. Last year, our second year, we had 3,200 people show up. That was just paying 10 and under. And this year, we move into the Denny Sanford Convention Center, and we're hoping for 5,000 to 6,000. So, Kim did a great job of describing SuperCon, but SuperCon is more than just comics. It's magic, it's music, it's wrestling, it's wonderful, it's comedy, and it's people coming together. It's 3 days of non-stop action, of gaming, of video gaming, of board gaming, of all of this. But more than that, much more than that, SuperCon is a place of acceptance, empowerment, validation, safety, and community. It's where the marginalized can feel accepted. It's where no matter who you are, you can feel that you're part of a community. It's about family being more than blood. Some of you may not believe that a comic book convention can do that, but let me tell you, as I walk the floor of every convention, schmoozing and talking to people, make sure people are having a good time, it's true. SuperCon is about developmentally disabled men from Yankton meeting DC comic book artist Tom Wynn and him taking the time to talk to them and draw their favorite superhero character from them. It's about VDR cosplay and a young local couple here from Sioux Falls, Brian and Rachel, who validate a young person who has spent hours working on a costume of a character that has inspired them and given them power. That same passion that may get them ridiculed in their school halls, these two people validate them for. It's Hollywood producer Ken Levin talking to a room full of people from South Dakota the same way he would talk to people from Broadway or a Manhattan boardroom, and praising a small local store in Brookings, South Dakota called Brookings Book Company for their first edition books. It's about the look on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles writer and Ghostbuster writer's Eric Burnham's face when the local club, South Dakota Ghostbusters, made him an honorary member. I'm serious, he was like thrilled. It's about a wave of nostalgia that washed over a room last year as Wilbur the Coyote made his return to South Dakota. It's about artist and writer Otis Frampton taking the time to do a sketch of a Jawa for my son and teach him how to care for his sketchbook and then give him a personalized signed book. It's about writer Sean E. Williams making such an impression because of his portrayal of women in his literature that Lori Byers Walsh remembered him from a 2016 interview and brought him up when I was with her on In the Moment last year. It's about New York Times best-selling author and Will Eisner Comic Industry Award-winning author Bill Willingham going to that same local bookstore in Brookings, South Dakota, and taking the time to sign every book that every person brought in. It's also about him telling a joke and laughing about how when you get into South Dakota from Minnesota, we sensationalize through sexuality gun silencers. If you've seen the billboard, you know what I'm talking about. It's about writer Gordon Purcell and actor Kaji Tang showing us what humble and family-oriented men they are because they called us and said we can't make the convention because our wives are ill, and they apologized to me for taking care of their families. It's about people who meet each other on a Friday, not knowing each other, and Sunday, 3 days when the comms leave, they're yelling, "Add me on Twitter, add me on Facebook, I love you, I can't wait to see you next year." It's about people of all sizes and ages feeling empowered enough to dress up in a costume around strangers. Now remember, folks, we're South Dakotans. This is where we Lutherans think sitting close is 4 pews back. Humility is not only a virtue in this state, it's almost a requirement, but these people dress up in these homemade costumes of cosplay. Cosplay in South Dakota before SuperCon meant putting on camo makeup, camo clothes, and sitting quietly on a stand at 4 a.m. waiting for a deer to go by so you could shoot it with your camo bow. It's the story of two ladies who I met after the convention last year. A committed couple who felt so empowered by coming to SuperCon in 2016 that they moved to Sioux Falls. I want you to think about how far we've come. I'm 50 years old. A lesbian couple felt so empowered by our convention that they moved to this city. It's about former Mayor Mike Huther taking the time to talk to a 7-year-old entrepreneur who makes his own trading cards and sells them. It's about the laughter I hear from indie events, a local movie production that brings in cutting-edge films to South Dakota. It's about the laughter of the comedy of local comedian Dan Bubitz Jr., Basement Dwellers Improv, and the comedy music duo, the McAllister Brothers. It's about my beautiful bride, Danelle, sitting in the Team Fox Back to the Future DeLorean and entering our wedding date. It's about local businesses like Hobby Lobby and Rainbow Comics having 3,500 people see their products in one weekend. It's about local artists who toil and maybe put a picture out every once in a while, getting a chance to put their product in front of 3,500 people for them to buy. It's about local promoters Stephanie and Nick Dinsmore of Midwest All-Pro taking the time to sign a replica championship belt of a young man who remembered Nick when he was Eugene in the WWE. It's about a blushing 49-year-old, last year, me, having 300 people sing happy birthday to him in the opening ceremonies, and that same broken down old man crying at the closing ceremonies as my autoimmune-stricken body was betraying me, and I realized I wouldn't be able to do as much for the convention as I have in the past. It's about my friend Cassandra fighting through her anxiety as she addressed 75 cosplayers looking to her for guidance. It's about the love shown by a young couple that are on our board, Danny and Joe, as they raise their children and still work the convention. It's about my friends Matt, Tyson, Caitlin, and Derek showing the board that our trust in them as volunteers to bring them on staff was validated as they worked their tails off, making sure every person got that unique South Dakota greeting and experience. It's about Chet's laughter. It's about Josh working to save the day with his technical expertise. It's about an army of volunteers, most of whom aren't nerds like me at all, but they're there working for us, giving their time. I'm still shocked, guys, that not one of those volunteers has showed up with a dish to pass. I was very reflective and melancholy as I sat at the Black Hills Credit Union main stage doing an interview with PBS at the end of last year's convention. I wasn't full of energy like I'd been for the entire convention. In fact, I was almost broken, my voice was gone, tears were streaming down my eyes, when it hit me that this is more about than about comic books. It's about the lives touched by our charities, Reach Literacy and the J. Wife 6 Foundation. We've given $5,000 the last 2 years. We're completely nonprofit, and we've given to those two charities. And more than that, it's about 3,500 people finding a place to call home right here in Sioux Falls. I remind the staff every day that we created this. We didn't wait for a convention to come to us. We did it ourselves, because that's what Plains people do.